Hello learners, I am Dr. Madhumati, Deputy Coordinator of the Early Childhood Education and Administration course at Srimati VHD Central Institute of Bangalore. Today I am going to give you a lesson on positive communication and positive action and an introduction to the theory of personality. Let's start with a short introduction of this concept. The exchange of information, ideas and feelings between people is called as communication. The two important types of communication are verbal and non-verbal. Children communicate from the day they are born. Responsive care and communicating positively enables the children to understand a person or situation better. It enables the children to create an environment in which creative ideas, problem solving, affection and caregiving can develop. The concept of positive action involves helping children to identify and resolve problems and also take responsibility for their behavior. The learning objectives for this lesson are to understand the meaning of positive communication and positive action, to learn about the strategies to promote positive communication and action, and to understand the Rogerian theory of personality. To see what is positive communication, you can just see that positive communication helps and increases a child's social and emotional well-being. This will influence their state of mental health in the later years. Some of the important strategies to foster positive communication are providing responsive care, building an emotional bond with the child, appreciating the child's early efforts at communication, and showing warmth and encouragement. Observation, imitation, and receiving feedback are the techniques through which children learn about social interactions and communication. When adults show responsive caring and proper communication with everyone, children also develop good social skills and the ability for building positive relationships. The positive action model works on the principle that if counseling programs focus on the problem of poor self-concept, then many problems like vandalism, abusive situations, and other negative actions can be reduced. Research has shown that children from insecure homes who do not feel good about themselves are more likely to experience these problems. Hence, the positive action model takes a positive approach, teaching two factors to children. The first one is the ill effects of negative actions. The second one is advantages of positive thoughts, actions and feelings. Let us now learn about self-concept, which has an influence on positive communication. During the age range of 2 to 6 years, a child's self-concept begins to get formed. Self-concept is an understanding of who we really are. Self-concept is made up of the following components, that is, how a child sees himself or herself, how a child thinks others see him or her, whether the child feels valued and cared for, whether the child has a sense of being competent, and whether the child is able to do things. Responsive caring and healthy communication by adults can support the development of a positive self-concept in children. Do you know what happens when adults are not responsive and caring, or when they give negative feedback and criticism? Such a child may develop poor self-esteem and negative self-concept. This may lead to emotional problems and depression during later years. Now let us see some of the benefits of positive communication and action. One of the first things is that children feel accepted. They learn to communicate and cooperate with others. Children also learn to show feelings of empathy and mutual respect towards children and adults. It provides a supportive environment for the healthy overall development of children. Children can learn and practice appropriate and acceptable behaviors as individuals in a group. Now let's see some of the ways to foster positive communication and action in children. Communication practices which highlight love, care and respect should be used always. The developmental stage of the child should be considered while communicating with them. Child-centered communication, which reflects the child's needs and interests, should be used. Positive facial expressions and a smiling face should be used while communicating with children. Eye contact should be maintained with babies and young children. And getting down to the same level as a child, as in kneeling down, sitting on the floor or using a small chair to gain their attention while talking to children is important. Keep instructions simple and specific. Listen to children with attention, showing a genuine interest in their ideas and activities. Talk with the children, not at them. Adults should be patient when children communicate with them. Children should be praised for positive behavior and their achievements should be acknowledged. The environment should encourage interaction and communication between children and adults. Feelings and opinions of children should be respected irrespective of their age. Open-ended questions or statements should be used to encourage children to communicate their own thoughts, feelings and ideas. There are some things that we should avoid while communicating with children. Some of them are criticizing or blaming children or being judgmental, lecturing, ordering or threatening children, talking to a child with your back turned or as you walk away, using or tolerating sarcasm, anger, put downs or name calling, impatient body language such as rolling your eyes, sighing or tapping your foot, diminishing praise, for example, thank you for cleaning up, I wish you did that every time, and so on and so forth. Now let me give you an activity to just demonstrate how the power of positive thinking works. The title of this activity is Health and Happiness. Try this exercise with your friends or family members. All you have to do is ask your friends as to how many of them are in a positive mood and how many are in a negative mood. Then instruct them to shake hands with others and genuinely say, I wish you happiness and good health. Again, ask your friends about their mood to see how many report positive and how many as negative. Yes, you will be surprised. The number of people who report as having positive moods would have gone up. By thinking and saying positive thoughts, you can gradually create a positive change in yourself as well as in others. Now let's move on to the Rogerian theory. I'll give you a short introduction to Carl Rogers. Carl Ransom Rogers lived between the time of 1902 to 1987. He was an American psychologist. He was one of the founders of the humanistic approach to psychology. He believed that our life in the present scenario and our current perceptions are more important than the past. He also believed that a close personal relationship with a supportive environment of warmth, genuineness and understanding is crucial for therapeutic change. He used the term client instead of a patient to refer to the equal importance given to the relationship between therapist and the client in client-centered therapy. Rogers believed people have an ability to heal themselves and work for personal growth, which in turn leads to self-actualization. So what is this self-actualization? Self-actualization, which is an important concept in child-centered therapy, refers to the tendency of all human beings to move forward, grow and reach their full potential. According to Rogers, self-actualization is hindered by negative, unhealthy attitudes about the self. Client-centered therapy was developed by Carl Rogers in 1930. It is also known as person-centered, non-directive or Rogerian therapy. It is a counseling approach in which the client takes an active role in his or her treatment. The therapist has a non-directive and supportive role in this type of counseling. The progress of the client depends on the course and direction of treatment as decided by the client, and the therapist supports and clarifies the responses of the client to bring about self-awareness. The goals of the client-centered therapy are to bring about increased self-esteem and openness to experience changes. Client-centered therapists work to help their clients to achieve the following. Firstly, to lead full lives of self-awareness. Secondly, to reduce defensiveness, guilt and insecurity. Thirdly, to lead positive and comfortable relationships with others. And lastly, to increase the capacity to experience and express their feelings. I'll tell you some of the key concepts of this therapy now. Carl Rogers called his therapy as non-directive in the beginning, as he felt that therapists should not guide the client. He later realized that clients always expect that therapists should provide guidance and will try to find it even when the therapist is not trying to guide. So he changed the name of this approach to client-centered. In recent times, it is popularly known as Rogerian therapy. There are some unique features of this particular therapy. Firstly, it does not focus on therapeutic techniques. The quality of the relationship between the therapist and the client is given utmost importance. It is effective for people suffering from depression, anxiety, alcohol disorders, cognitive dysfunction, schizophrenia and personality disorders. It requires a high level of empathy. The client should share accurate reflections of his or her feelings, and the perceptions are the key aspects in this type of therapy. Rogers believed that mental disorders arise from unrealistic conditions of worth acquired early in life. Conditions of worth mean the beliefs of individuals that they must be something other than what they really are in order to be loved and accepted by others. Rogerian therapy attempts to change such beliefs by placing individuals in an environment where they receive unconditional acceptance from the therapist. When people seek therapy through this approach, they are said to be in a state of incongruence. It means that there is a difference between how they perceive themselves and reality. Developing an accurate self-concept is an important goal for client-centered therapy. For example, a person may consider himself or herself as an excellent entertainer, but others may feel he or she is not very good. The client-centered therapists help their clients to reach a state of congruence. In client-centered therapy, the therapist does not attempt to change the client's thinking in any way. The therapist only facilitates self-actualization by providing a comfortable environment for clients to freely engage in focused, in-depth self-exploration. In client-centered therapy, the therapist's attitude is more important than the therapist's skill. There are 3 factors that determine the level of success of this therapy: congruence or genuineness, unconditional positive regard, and empathy. First, let us study about the genuineness. This is also known as congruence, and it is the most important factor in therapeutic counseling according to Rogers. It refers to the ability of the therapist to be dependable. It does not mean that the therapist should disclose their problems to clients. It only means that the therapist shares his or her feelings regarding the client's experiences. The second one is unconditional positive regard. The therapist gives an unconditional support to the client and accepts the client throughout counseling process irrespective of the feelings they are experiencing. Rogers believed that the more the client is treated in an unconditional manner, the more the client will be likely to grow and improve. The last one is empathy. Empathy refers to the idea that the therapist is able to capture the meaning and personal feelings that the client is experiencing in a sensitive and accurate manner. Now let us study the Rogerian theory of personality in detail. According to Rogers, all organisms know what is good for them. In his opinion, evolution has provided us with the senses and the sense of right or wrong. For example, when we feel hungry, we find food that is not only edible but also tasty. We tend to reject food that tastes bad as it is likely to be spoiled, rotten and unhealthy. This is how choices are made to distinguish between good and bad things. This is known as organismic valuing. Self-concept is the main focus of the Rogerian theory of personality. This is defined as the organized, consistent set of perceptions and beliefs about oneself. The self is the humanistic term for who we really are as a person. It is our inner personality and can be likened to the soul or psyche as recognized by Freud. The self is influenced by the experiences a person has in their life. Two factors that influence our self-concept are childhood experiences and evaluation by others. The Rogerian theory states that self is composed of unique concepts. The first one being self-worth or self-esteem. This is what we think about ourselves. Rogers believed feelings of self-worth developed in early childhood and were formed from the interaction of the child with the mother and father. The second one is the self-image. This is about how we see ourselves, which is important to good psychological health. Self-image includes the influence of our body image on inner personality. At a simpler level, we might perceive ourselves as a good or a bad person, beautiful or ugly. Self-image has an effect on how a person thinks, feels and behaves in the world. The last one is the ideal self. This is the person who we would actually like to be. It consists of our goals and ambitions in life and is dynamic. That is, it keeps changing. The ideal self in childhood is not the ideal self in our teens or late 20s. Rogers uses positive regard as a single term to express love, affection, care, attention, nurturance and so on. It is clear that babies need love and attention. Positive self-regard, which is self-esteem, self-worth and positive self-image all put together, is achieved by receiving and experiencing the positive regard by significant adults during childhood years. Without this self-regard, children feel small and helpless. As children grow up, parents, teachers, peers, the media and others only give them their needs when they prove their worth. For example, children get love and affection only when they behave. According to Rogers, this is called as establishing conditions of worth. Rogers calls getting positive regard on condition as conditional positive regard. Later, this conditioning leads us to have conditional positive self-regard as well. We begin to like ourselves if we can match up with the standards and expectation others have about us. Since these standards were created without keeping each individual in mind, we find ourselves unable to meet them and therefore unable to maintain any sense of self-esteem. Real self is the sum total of attributes, characteristics and personality of an individual. It contains both negatives and positives. It is a result of accumulated experiences over the years. A person could be happy-go-lucky, generous, anxiety-prone, organized, accident-prone, always willing to help others, selfish or self-centered. The ideal self, on the other hand, is when a person feels I should be like this, that is, I should be honest, I should be helpful, etc. This is because of societal and parental influences. Sometimes people see their role models and try to follow them. As long as they try and succeed, it will be fine. Even when they try and not succeed, it is still fine with them. But when they try and do not succeed and they feel so bad that they start hating themselves, that is when the problems will arise. This is called as the ideal self, which is the standard that is very difficult to meet. When we have a rigid ideal self and are unable to reach it, then there will be a state of incongruence or neurosis. This gap between the real self and the ideal self, that is the I am and the I should, is called as incongruity. The greater the gap, the more incongruity. The more incongruity, the more suffering. According to Rogers, incongruity, that is being out of sync with your own self, means neurosis. When a child is in a situation where there is incongruity between the ideal and the real self, then the child is said to be in a threatening situation. For example, if the child has been taught to feel unworthy for not getting good marks in a test, and if the child isn't really a good student, then the test situations bring incongruity in the child, that is, the child perceives all tests as threatening. When a threatening situation is expected, the child will feel anxiety. Anxiety is a sign or signal indicating that there is trouble ahead and that you should avoid such a situation. This is when a child faces anxiety and he starts using defenses. Rogers' idea of defenses is very similar to that of Freud's, except that Roger considers everything from a perceptual point of view so that even memories and impulses are thought of as perceptions. Hence, he talks about only two defenses, that is denial and perceptual distortion. Denial is when a child locks out the threatening situation altogether. An example is when a child avoids tests or test results so he or she does not have to face the poor scoring of marks. The second one is perceptual distortion. Perceptual distortion is a matter of reinterpreting the situation so that it appears less threatening. A student that is threatened by tests and marks may, for example, blame the teacher for poor teaching, trick questions, bad attitude, or whatever. Rogers also gives a partial explanation for psychosis. Psychosis occurs when a person's defenses are overwhelmed and their sense of self becomes shattered into little disconnected pieces. His behavior likewise has little consistency to it. We see such a person as having psychotic breaks or episodes of bizarre behavior. His words may make little sense. His emotions may be inappropriate. He may lose the ability to differentiate self and non-self and become disoriented and passive. On the other hand, the fully functioning person, as described by Rogers, is a healthy person that involves the following qualities. The first quality Rogers mentions is openness to experience. This is the opposite of defensiveness. It is the accurate perception of one's experiences in the world, including one's feelings. It also means being able to accept reality. The second point is existential living, which means living in the present. As a part of getting in touch with reality, we should not live in the past or the future, but we should always live in the present. The third one is the organismic trusting. We should allow ourselves to be guided by the organismic valuing process. We should trust ourselves, do what feels right and what comes natural to us. The fourth one is experiential freedom. As Rogers says that the fully functioning person acknowledges the feeling of freedom and takes responsibility for his choices. The last one is the creativity, which the fully functioning person will be so confident about, and he will contribute towards actualization of others. This can be achieved through expressing creativity in daily activities, showing social concern and parental love, or simply by doing one's best at one's job. In conclusion, we can say that the modern world we live in are full of surprises, challenges and changes. The changes are due to the technological developments taking place at a very fast pace. Cultural beliefs, values and social relations in the traditional societies are being eroded constantly by Western cultures through television, internet, magazines, music and other influences. All these changes are causing young people to be confused and emotionally drained. It is in such situations that knowledge and skills in counseling become handy. Positive communication and actions will make the people live in independent, happy and effective lives. According to client-centered therapy, a warm, caring environment free from the threat of rejection can help individuals to understand their own feelings. They see themselves as unique human beings with many desirable characteristics. Carl Rogers suggests that many mental disorders disappear and individuals can move towards their goal of self-fulfillment. Thank you.